Hello you guys, welcome back to another video and hope everyone's having a great day. And if you're new, welcome. My name is Jai and welcome to my channel. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, share at least. And we are back with Wansee Entertainment compilations of June 2020. This is 16 horror stories animated. So sit back, relax, and let's get it poppin'. I got killed by a weird guy at the Inking Road.
It was wintertime, and Christmas was approaching. I was 25 years old, and I was going to meet up with some of my friends who lived on the other side of the city. It was a 4-hour drive from my place, so I decided to take my own car instead of a local cab. It was my first time going alone on such a long drive, and I felt nervous, but excited. At midday, I packed my bags, threw them in the trunk, and went off to meet my friends. It was a cold day, but the roads were clear. I didn't see much traffic as it was the holidays, and people would rather spend time with their families and friends indoors and stay off the roads. Now, I'm not the type of person to go straight to my friend's house. I like to take my time. I'm a social media freak, and I enjoy posting pictures pretty much all the time. So I found the journey an excellent excuse to post some extra pictures. The road I was taking had beautiful scenery, and the place where my friends lived was even more magical. I stopped a lot during my ride to take pictures. I was having a great time by myself. Well, that was until the weather suddenly changed. It was around 6 p.m., and I was still driving. I still had a long way ahead of me. And that's when it started to snow. Not just a dusting of snow, it was thick and heavy. After 15 minutes or so, the roads were already covered with a few feet of snow. I felt anxious, since it was getting dark and I wasn't even halfway through the drive. My car slowed down, and I had to force it to run on the empty roads. The heavy snow didn't stop. I decided that I would stop at the closest gas station I could find, but unfortunately, I couldn't find one for a while. An hour later, I finally saw some light shining from the distance. It was a gas station. I pressed the accelerator, rushed to the station, parked my car, and went inside quickly. Just as I entered, a strong snowstorm started. The gas station had a little shop tucked away with some chairs to sit on.
Oh, wow.
The guy at the counter was an ordinary fellow. He didn't really talk much. He only asked me where I was going in such harsh weather. After that, I bought some chips and drinks and sat down in the furthest chair from him. It was night now. I sat, munched on my food, and scrolled through an Instagram. Then, suddenly, the shop's door opened. I looked up, and a very weird-looking man entered.
Maybe he wasn't
He
taking
had long,
pictures,
greasy hair,
but you don't
was
know
wearing a
what
long
happened.
coat, and had a very grim expression. I saw him buy some cigarettes, and he sat down a few chairs away from me. He didn't look at me at all. At first, I ignored him, but then he started smoking. Since the shop was small and the smoke filled the air quickly, the shopkeeper told him to stop, but he didn't listen. He couldn't ask him to leave because of the storm, so he didn't say anything else.
Rude.
I, on the other hand,
Stop
hated
recording.
cigarettes. The weird guy was looking down, breathing very heavily as he smoked. It was as if he was breathing in my ears. So when he took out his 5th cigarette, I lost my temper and angrily told him to stop.
His 5th cigarette.
He looked at me for a couple of minutes. His big eyes were red with anger. But then he smiled and stopped smoking. His smile was unnerving. I sat down again and distracted myself on my phone. Shortly afterwards, my friend called me, asking why I hadn't reached their place yet. I told him the whole story, and he said the storm would soon be over, and I shouldn't worry. When I hung up, I noticed the weird guy staring at my phone with deep interest. I was afraid that he was thinking of stealing it. But to my relief, after some time, he got up to leave. At the door, he stopped, looked back, and screamed loudly before running away, scaring the crap out of me and the shopkeeper. He didn't return after that. At 10:30 p.m., the storm ended, and I immediately left after thanking the shopkeeper. I went into my car, started it, and drove off. For
You
some
seen
time,
that?
I drove in silence, but then I heard a noise. It sounded like heavy breathing. My heart rate shot up and my hands got all sweaty
He's
as
in
the
there.
breathing sounded so familiar
You don't lock your
and
door,
so
Mo,
close.
boy?
I looked through my rearview mirror and screamed. The weird guy from the shop was sitting in my front seat, smiling. I
Look
pressed
at
the
that.
brakes very hard, got out of the car and started running. I felt him running after me too, yelling at the top of his lungs.
Ooh.
The road was empty,
Like a
and I felt
360.
hopeless as I knew he was faster than me. I only looked back once to see him running like an unnatural being and holding
Oh,
a
wow.
knife in his hand. I increased my pace, still wondering how on earth he got inside my car. I might have forgotten to lock the door when I first left to go to the gas
Yeah.
station. But now, it was too late for regret. My life was at risk
Like a
because some
360.
psychopath was after me. Then I saw some headlights at a distance. I started waving my hands like a maniac, screaming for them to stop. They did, and it turned out to be my friend.
Oh.
He had come to pick me up as he was worried since I was pretty late and thought something went
That's a
wrong.
good friend.
I looked back and I saw that guy was gone. I got inside my friend's car and told him everything. He called the cops and they arrived shortly after. We all went to my car first and noticed some marks made by a knife in the back seat. The cops couldn't find the guy anywhere. After some investigation, they let us leave. I drove my car and my friend drove his car back to his place. The cops never found the guy. And to this day, I still wonder what would have happened if my friend didn't turn up that night.
Murder in front of my house.
I was 12 years old when this happened. My grandmother just got home from the hospital because she had a stroke. She couldn't go up to the second floor of our house, in which her room was located. So my uncle, my little brother, and I decided that we were going to sleep in her room for a while. Before this day happened, my aunt bought a new air conditioner, so the old one would be removed. And of course, there was a hole in the wall for the air conditioner. I covered the hole with some kind of small box before working on the wall, so the air wouldn't come in. Anyway, back to the situation. My uncle and I were playing a mobile game at 3 a.m. when this happened. We played for about an hour or so until my little brother had fallen asleep. While I was paying attention, I suddenly heard a small scratching sound coming from the hole on the wall where I covered it with a box. Its sound was like someone trying to remove it with something. However, I just ignored it at first, because I thought it might be a cat trying to remove the cover. After 5 minutes, my uncle heard the sound, and he whispered in my ear, saying, "Did you hear that sound?" I said, "Yeah, I heard it too, but maybe it's just a cat. Forget about it." After that, we had forgotten about the sound, and we just played again, until that moment.
It happened again.
All of a sudden, my uncle quickly put down his cell phone and started to search with the flashlight. "What's wrong?" I asked him, but he pointed his finger on his mouth and pointed it to the window. It was quiet outside. "That's weird. I heard someone's footsteps." He talked to me sitting back next to me. I tried to say that it's nothing, but this time I heard those footsteps. Someone was outside walking around with a creaking sound. So we eventually decided to look for it, opening the box cover. But before we could get closer, my little brother began to scream. We were shocked by that, but then we just laughed, thinking our reaction was silly. I talked to my little brother and asked him what happened. He said that he had a nightmare. We laughed again, much bigger this time. Bump! We abruptly froze when we heard loud footsteps from a roof away from us. My heart dropped. "What was it?" my uncle said with an anxious voice. We then stayed away from the wall and started panicking. I started to think that it might be a thief who was trying to enter our house. What if he would try to kill us? How were we going to stop him? What should I do? However, despite all my worries, nothing happened after that. There were no footsteps anymore, but my uncle and I had to stay up until the next morning, shivering together. A few days later, my grandpa covered the wall with cement. And that day, we were watching the local news, and we heard that one of our neighbors, who lived right next to us, had been murdered. They also reported that the suspect has not been found,
Oh, wow.
so the cops
That's
were
what it was.
struggling to arrest him. We just couldn't believe the news. We just watched the news with our mouth open. That moment became the worst nightmare of my whole life. What if I dared to try to remove that small box to see outside on that day?
Ouija board, the true Ouija board story.
For this story, my name will be Charlie.
Charlie.
Years ago, my first year of college, I lived in a
Charlie,
dorm.
Charlie, are you
But
there?
if only I knew what was going to happen. I earned a scholarship to college for baseball, and all the players lived in one dorm. Being that I was a freshman, they roommate was a senior so he could show me what right looks like. He was a pretty tough guy who no one would mess with, so I felt like I was in good hands. It was the winter, and by that time of the school year, I was pretty set in my ways and comfortable. I was invited to a house party that one of the sororities were throwing, so I went with a few friends. When we got there, it was like any other party. People were outside, and some were inside having fun. While inside, there was music playing, along with people playing video games in one room, and it looked like a board game going on in the other. That was upstairs. After a while, I went upstairs to see why anyone would be playing a board game at a party. When I got to the room, I noticed that it was the most quiet room in the house, which was odd to me. When I walked in the room, there were 4 girls and a guy sitting at a table. I asked what was going on, and they said they were using the Ouija board. I thought it sounded interesting, so I joined. But I never really believed in that type of stuff. While we were messing with the board, they said that there was a girl in the room. But I think that one of the other people that were playing moved it, so I left. That's when unexplainable stuff would happen to me in my dorm. I'd hear laughing in our hallways at odd times of the night, knocks on the window, and I started to have bad dreams. I told my roommate, but he told me it was stress from our upcoming midterms.
Girl, I mean, boy, got attached to
That
you.
went on for about 2 weeks. Then one night, everything changed for both of us. I remember it being a Thursday night when this happened. I was asleep in the middle of the night, and all I heard was, "Charlie! Charlie! Charlie, wake up!" I remember making noises and being half asleep, but I acknowledged him. Then he said something that woke me up immediately. "Charlie,
Why his face like that?
what the fuck is that in the corner?" I looked in the corner of the room and I swear there was a silhouette of a girl. I was so afraid that I jumped off the top bunk and I told my roommate to get up and run, but he was so petrified. He was under his covers quivering. Then she spoke.
Why do you seem so scared? All I wanted to do was play with you.
I told him,
Oh my
we
God.
both ran out of our room. He was yelling as she's talking. After that, we were both so shaken that we never went back to that room. We called the police, but when they came, they never found any girl. I don't know if it was because of the house party, Ouija board game, or coincidence, but that was a moment that I'll never forget. To this day, I still hear odd noises throughout the night wherever I go.
This is gonna be the last one. Neighbor was a serious
When I
stalker.
was 7 or 8 years old, a man moved to my neighborhood. He was around his 60s and introduced himself to me. His name was Tom. He was the only one who spoke English fluently in our neighborhood, but he always tried to speak our native language. He seemed really nice at first. One day after school, my friends and I saw a new cafe in our neighborhood. We were curious and wanted to know how many desserts they had, so we stopped by and looked inside. Then we heard someone say, "Hello, kids." He then said, "Come on in. You can have all the desserts you want for free." Without thinking, we went inside and stayed there for 2 hours.
2 hours.
After that, we soon stayed there almost every day after school. Everyone started to like Tom. One day, we went to his cafe like we usually did. but for some reason I felt kind of uncomfortable because at some point I noticed that there were only kids inside his shop. Tom came to me and said, "Hey, I saw you yesterday with a cat. Do you like cats?" I said yes, and he proceeded to talk to me more. He told me that he has 8 cats in his house and showed me pictures of his cats. All of a sudden, one of his pictures from inside his wallet fell to the floor.
No, you don't.
I picked it up and I could see a girl's face with blonde curly hair and green eyes. I thought that she was his granddaughter, but what he told me next was a huge shock. He said, "Oh, this is my wife. She lives in London right now." I was confused because the girl in the picture was just a kid, maybe 14 or 15 years old. I thought that he was lying or something. Then I got up. "Oh, I forgot. My mom is waiting for me." So I quickly left the shop and went back home. Then I just hugged my mom. The next day when I got to school, there were policemen everywhere. I didn't understand what was going on. Then one police officer walked over to me and he said, "Kid, you have to come with us." They also called my parents, so we went to the police station together. It turned out that Tom's warrant was
He's a
served.
pedophile.
They found lots of data on his computer about the young girls who were raped by him. He even lied about his name. His real name was Hardin. The worst and most horrible thing was when they entered his room. The entire wall was covered with my pictures. When they said this to my parents, I was terrified, so I fainted. The police arrested him, and he was put in jail for several years. Now I'm 18 years old, but I am still afraid. According to my neighbors, he's returning to our neighborhood. I don't want to go out, and I don't even know what to do. If anyone has any advice, please help me and let me know what I should do.
Get a restraining order. That's what you can do. Get a restraining order on that ass. It's tough out here in these streets. People are crazy and delusional. So, thank you guys for tuning into this video. Tell me guys which story was the most creepiest, most outstanding. And until next time, you guys, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share this video. And until next time, it's your life. Do what you want and do it properly. Peace.